Faith, in the sense in which I am here using the word, is the art of holding on to things your reason has once accepted, in spite of your changing moods, C.S. Lewis insightfully remarked. How often have you found yourself in moments of triumph, only to have your victories dismissed by others as mere coincidence or luck? Yet, deep within your heart, you recognize the guiding hand of God, orchestrating every detail of your life. This very moment is no accident. God has led you here today to remind you that the prayers you've whispered in the quiet of the night, the tears you've shed in solitude, and the desires that burn deep within your soul have not gone unnoticed. You are not alone in your journey, and the outcomes you long for are not left to chance. In Proverbs 16 verse 3, we are given a powerful promise: commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. This verse is not just a call to action, it is a divine assurance that when we entrust our efforts, dreams, and deepest longings to God, He will bring them to fruition in alignment with His perfect plan. But what does it truly mean to commit our works to the Lord? It means surrendering control, releasing the tight grip we have on our plans, and allowing God to mold our desires to match His will. It is an act of faith that requires vulnerability, a letting go of the fear that if we don't manage every detail, things might fall apart. Yet, in this surrender, there is profound peace. God does not merely guide our steps, He reshapes our very thoughts, aligning them with His higher purpose, and in doing so, He leads us to a victory that is far greater than anything we could have achieved on our own.
Consider for a moment the pain that lingers in your heart, the disappointments, the unfulfilled dreams, the prayers that seem to hang in the air unanswered. These are the places where God is most at work, even when it feels like nothing is happening. In these moments, when the silence is deafening and hope seems dim, it is easy to believe that maybe, just maybe, your victories were coincidental and your prayers might never be answered. But let me assure you, God is moving. The victories you've experienced are not random acts of fate. They are the result of God's meticulous design for your life. He hears every sigh, sees every tear, and knows every desire that you hold in the secret chambers of your heart. As you sit with these thoughts, let the truth sink deep into your spirit. God is working in your life, even now. He is establishing your thoughts, guiding your desires, and preparing you for the fulfillment of His promises. But this journey requires your active participation. It requires you to continue to trust, to surrender, and to hold on to the faith that C.S. Lewis described, a faith that persists even when the path is unclear and the outcome is uncertain. Stay with us on this journey of faith, for there is more to uncover, more to understand, and more hope to grasp. Each word shared here is meant to draw you closer to the realization of God's plans for you. If this message has touched a chord in your heart, I invite you to engage by liking this message and commenting, "I trust in God's plan for my life." Your affirmation of faith not only strengthens your own resolve, but also extends this message of hope to others who are in desperate need of it. Let us walk together in faith as we explore the depths of God's promises, learning how to truly commit every aspect of our lives to Him. Together, we will witness the unfolding of His divine will, and in doing so, experience the deep, soul-satisfying peace that comes from knowing we are held in the hands of the Almighty. Can I get a "bless the Lord" from you?
Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, turbulent sea, your heart filled with uncertainty. The world may tell you that the waves you conquer are mere strokes of luck, but deep down, do you truly believe that? C.S. Lewis once posed a profound question: isn't it odd that anyone should have to remind you that you are, after all, on a journey?
In our journey through life, it is easy to overlook the divine hand that steers us. Often, we attribute our successes to chance or our own efforts, yet those who walk by faith recognize a deeper truth. Lewis observed that faith is not merely passive belief, but an active trust in a benevolent, omnipotent Creator who is intimately involved in our lives. Consider the story of Jesus calming the storm in Mark 4 verse 35 to 41. The disciples, in their panic, woke Jesus, crying out in fear as the storm raged around them. Jesus' response was not only to still the storm, but to question their lack of faith. "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" This narrative serves as a powerful reminder that the storms we face are not meant to drown us, but to teach us to trust in the one who controls the winds and waves. Like the disciples, we often find ourselves in life's storms, questioning whether we will make it through. Yet, what if these storms are not obstacles but opportunities to deepen our trust in God? Every answered prayer, every moment of peace amidst chaos, is a testament to God's guiding hand. The helm of your life, when entrusted to God, is not led by chance but by divine wisdom. Lewis eloquently stated, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world in our moments of victory. We should pause and ask ourselves, who is truly steering my ship?" Faith allows us to see beyond the immediate, to understand that each success is not random but the result of divine orchestration. Trust in God's plan, for he knows the way to your victory. When you surrender the helm to him, you are placing your life in the hands of the most experienced captain. He sees beyond the horizon, knows the currents of your life, and leads you not just to safety, but to the place where you are meant to thrive.
Consider a moment in your life where the weight of your circumstances seemed unbearable. How did it feel to stand at the edge of despair, wondering if there could ever be a way out? The prophet Isaiah, in 43 verse 19, speaks to such moments, "Behold, I will do a new thing." This promise isn't merely a glimmer of hope, it's a declaration from God that he is actively at work in your life, even when you can't see it. C.S. Lewis, in his Reflections, often spoke of the deep longing in our hearts for something beyond the pain, a yearning for a divine intervention that renews and restores. He wrote, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. Could it be that your current struggles are the very tools God is using to craft a new beginning?"
Imagine the financial strain that looms over you, casting a shadow over every aspect of your life. It feels endless, doesn't it? Yet, Lewis reminds us, there are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. God is already at work, opening doors to new opportunities, bringing forth relationships that will usher in favor and blessings beyond what you can imagine. The key is not in seeing the outcome immediately, but in trusting the process, knowing that God is moving even in the unseen. Consider also the medical diagnosis that feels like an insurmountable mountain. The fear that grips your heart, the uncertainty of what the future holds, these are real, and they weigh heavily on your spirit. But let me ask you, what if this is the moment where God steps in, bringing healing and restoration in ways you never thought possible? Lewis once said, "Pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world." Perhaps, through this very pain, God is not only healing your body but also awakening your spirit to his presence and power. As you face these challenges, remember that God is not distant. He is driving away the forces of darkness that seek to overwhelm you. But he calls you to participate in this divine work by believing in his promises. C.S. Lewis poignantly asked, "What do people mean when they say, 'I am not afraid of God because I know he is good'? Have they never even been to a dentist?" In other words, do we truly grasp the depth of God's goodness, even when it comes with discomfort? It's in the act of faith, of trusting that God's goodness will prevail, that we see the new thing he is doing in our lives. So, open your heart and spirit wide. God is not merely hinting at a possible change, he is declaring it. The new opportunities, the restoration of health, the release from financial burdens, they are not just possibilities, they are realities waiting to unfold. Your part is to believe, to trust, and to walk forward in faith, knowing that the God who promised is faithful to complete the work he has begun in you. Imagine standing on the battlefield of life, where unseen forces press against your spirit, testing your resolve. In such moments, do you feel the weight of your burdens, or do you stand firm, clothed in the armor of God? In Ephesians 6 verse 10 to 11, Paul's exhortation rings clear. "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." This isn't just a call to action, it's a profound reminder that our strength does not lie in ourselves but in God's mighty power. C.S. Lewis once said, Relying on God has to begin all over again every day as if nothing had yet been done. In his profound wisdom, Lewis recognizes that our journey of faith is not a one-time event, but a continuous battle, a daily decision to trust in God's strength rather than our own. Have you ever considered that the armor of God is not just protection but a symbol of our partnership with Him? God drives away the darkness, but do we trust Him enough to put on the armor He provides? Lewis also posed a challenging thought in Mere Christianity: if you want a religion to make you feel really comfortable, I certainly don't recommend Christianity. The Christian life is not meant to be comfortable. It is a call to spiritual warfare, where faith becomes our shield and prayer our sword. The question we must ask ourselves is, are we willing to step into this battle, trusting in God's protection, even when the odds seem overwhelming? When Paul speaks of the wiles of the devil, he warns us of the subtle and cunning ways in which we can be led astray. Here, Lewis's insight into the nature of evil becomes invaluable. In the Screwtape Letters, Lewis illustrates how the devil's tactics are often not overt but insidiously disguised in the mundane distractions and temptations of daily life. Are we vigilant enough to recognize these threats, or do we falter because we have not fully embraced the armor of God? Faith, then, is not just a shield but a decision to trust in the unseen, to stand firm when the battle rages. Prayer is our direct line to the commander, our strength when we feel weak. Yet, as Lewis reminds us, our reliance on God must be renewed daily, as each day brings new challenges and new opportunities to stand firm in His might.
So, as you face the battles of today, do you wear the armor of God with confidence, or do you waver? Remember, God is driving away the forces of darkness, but it is your faith that activates His power. Will you trust in His protection and do your part, or will you allow fear to strip you of the armor designed to save you? The choice, as always, is yours.
Imagine yourself as a traveler in a vast, uncharted wilderness. You are equipped with a map and a compass, both provided by the most skilled and knowledgeable guide. However, to navigate successfully through the unknown, you must not only trust in the tools given to you but also in the guide's wisdom. C.S. Lewis once remarked, "Faith is the art of holding on to things your reason has once accepted, in spite of your changing moods." What happens when doubt creeps in, when the path is unclear, or when you face trials that seem insurmountable? Just as the traveler must choose to follow the map and compass, even when the terrain is treacherous, we too must cling to the spiritual tools God has provided. Lewis often spoke of the deeper magic that lies beneath the surface of our world, a reference to the ancient truths of God's kingdom that empower and protect us. But have you ever wondered why, despite having these powerful truths at our disposal, we sometimes falter? Could it be that we, like the traveler, occasionally forget to trust in the guide's expertise? God, in His infinite wisdom, has given us spiritual armor to wear in the battles of life. Yet, as Lewis would challenge us to ponder, what good is armor if it remains unworn, left to rust in the corner? What is the value of a sword if it is never wielded in the fight? The armor of God, the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, and the sword of the Spirit are all essential, but they only fulfill their purpose when we actively use them. Consider this: are there areas in your life where you have neglected to put on this armor? Do you find yourself struggling with doubts or fears because you have not fully trusted in the power and protection God offers? Lewis might remind us that true faith involves not just belief but action, a conscious decision to trust and to fight, even when the battle is fierce. The victory, then, is not just in God's power, which is undeniable and ever-present, but in our willingness to act on that power. As you reflect on your own journey, ask yourself, are you merely acknowledging God's strength, or are you living in it? Are you taking up the armor He has provided, or are you leaving it unused, hoping the battles will cease on their own? In embracing God's guidance and armor, you prepare yourself to face any challenge, knowing that He is with you, driving away the darkness. But remember, the act of putting on that armor is a daily choice, a testament to your faith and determination. Lewis might say that in these choices we reveal the true nature of our belief, whether it is a passive acknowledgement or an active, living faith that shapes our every action. So, As you stand on the battlefield of life, equipped with God's provisions, ask yourself, will you trust the guide and use the tools He has given you? The victory lies not just in what He has done, but in how you choose to respond. Imagine the Israelites, weary from years of captivity in Babylon, feeling the weight of despair as they trudged through their days, seemingly forgotten by God. Their hearts, heavy with the burden of their trials, longed for a glimmer of hope. Then came Isaiah, a voice breaking through their darkness, proclaiming a message that must have seemed almost impossible to believe. Behold, I will do a new thing. In a land where despair had taken root, Isaiah dared to speak of rivers flowing through the desert, of barren land transformed into fertile soil. But what does this mean for you today? Are there deserts in your life, places where hope seems dry and lifeless? C.S. Lewis once wrote, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world." Could it be that the dry places in your life are not signs of abandonment, but opportunities for God to shout His promise to you? Isaiah's words were not just for the Israelites, they echo across the ages to remind us that God is still in the business of doing new things. But how often do we miss these new things because we're focused on the deserts, on the obstacles, rather than on the one who creates rivers in those deserts? Lewis also spoke of the necessity of surrender in the face of divine intervention. He said, "There are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. To see the rivers God is creating, to witness the transformation of dry ground into fertile land, we must be willing to let go of the past and open our eyes to the new things He is doing." Are you willing to let go? To agree with God, as Isaiah urged, and say, "Yes, God, this is for me." This act of faith, of aligning yourself with God's promises, is not passive. It's an active participation in the new work He is doing in your life. Just as the Israelites had to choose to believe in the possibility of deliverance, you too must choose to see the new thing God is doing, even when the desert stretches endlessly before you. Consider this: what if your greatest challenge is the fertile ground for God's greatest miracle? What if the rivers He promises are already beginning to flow, just beyond your sight? As you ponder these questions, remember Lewis's words: faith is the art of holding on to things in spite of your changing moods and circumstances. Let this faith be your anchor as you claim the new thing God is doing in your life. The Israelites endured countless trials, facing injustices that could easily trap their hearts in bitterness and sorrow. Yet, Isaiah 43 verse 18 to 19 calls us to something greater. Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. This divine exhortation isn't merely a command to move on from past hurts, it's an invitation to trust in God's ongoing work in our lives. But how often do we find ourselves imprisoned by the shadows of yesterday's pain, unable to embrace the dawn of new blessings? C.S. Lewis, in his profound exploration of human nature, often spoke of the peril of being ensnared by our past. In The Great Divorce, he illustrated how clinging to former things can distort our ability to receive present joys. You can't go back and change the beginning, Lewis wrote, but you can start where you are and change the ending. This speaks directly to the heart of Isaiah's message. God doesn't want us to be burdened by what has already transpired, but to be open to the transformation He is working in us now. Reflecting on Lewis's insights, one might ask, what old wounds or regrets are we holding on to that might hinder our journey with God? Are we so fixated on past injustices that we fail to perceive the new paths He is carving through our wilderness? Lewis reminds us that redemption and renewal are at the heart of the Christian journey, echoing Isaiah's words of hope and new beginnings. By letting go of our past grievances and looking forward with trust, we align ourselves with God's promise to make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. The question we must ponder is whether we will let the weight of the past keep us from the future God has planned. Just as Lewis urged his readers to leave behind the ghosts of yesterday, Isaiah calls us to open our hearts to the new creation God is unfolding before us. Will you step forward into this new thing He is doing? Or will you let the past chain you to a life devoid of the vibrant blessings that await? Imagine a traveler on a long journey, burdened with a heavy backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents a past hurt, an injustice, or a painful memory. Now consider the wisdom in C.S. Lewis's words. Getting over a painful experience is much like crossing monkey bars. You have to let go at some point in order to move forward. How often do we, like that traveler, cling to our burdens, unable to let go and move forward? We might ask ourselves, what if holding on to these pains is preventing us from experiencing the new blessings God has in store? Lewis often spoke about the importance of trusting God's plan, even when it doesn't align with our understanding. He famously said, "We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us, we are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be." This invites us to reflect, are we allowing the fear of future pain, rooted in past experiences, to cloud our vision of the good God has prepared for us? Picture yourself at the wheel of a car, navigating through life. The rearview mirror serves its purpose, offering a glimpse of where you've been. But imagine the chaos if you tried to drive forward while staring only at that mirror. C.S. Lewis might remind us here that you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. What if God is urging you to fix your eyes on the road ahead, where His promises lie, rather than being paralyzed by the shadows of what lies behind?
God's call to leave the past behind is not an invitation to dismiss our experiences, but to reframe them as lessons that build our trust in Him. As Lewis insightfully observed, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Could it be that through these very pains, God is preparing us for something far greater?
The future God has planned is not just a destination, but a journey filled with hope and faith. By releasing the grip on past injustices and pains, we open ourselves to receive the fresh grace and favor He is eager to bestow. Lewis reminds us that there are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. So, as you walk forward, ask yourself, what might God be preparing for me that I've yet to see? In faith, let us trust in His plan, for it leads us toward a future far brighter than we can imagine. When someone betrays, hurts, or deeply disappoints you, the natural response might be to cling to that pain, letting it fester. However, surrendering that pain to God is not only necessary, it is transformative. As C.S. Lewis once observed, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. This profound truth calls us to reflect on the purpose of our suffering. Could it be that these painful experiences are God's way of drawing us closer to Him, urging us to trust in His promise of renewal? Consider the story of Joseph, a man whose life was marked by betrayal and injustice. His own brothers, driven by jealousy, sold him into slavery. One might wonder, how did Joseph not succumb to bitterness and despair? How did he continue to trust in a God who allowed such suffering? C.S. Lewis might suggest that Joseph's suffering was not in vain, but rather a tool used by God to shape him into the leader he would eventually become. It is in this light that we can see God's hand at work, even in our darkest moments. Joseph's life in Egypt was fraught with challenges, false accusations, imprisonment, and loneliness. Yet, through it all, he entrusted his pain to God, holding on to the belief that God was still at work, even when all evidence seemed to suggest otherwise. Could it be that in our own lives, God is asking us to do the same? To hand over our pain, our disappointments, and our wounds, trusting that He will bring about beauty from the ashes? God's promise is not just for the distant future, but for the present. As He did with Joseph, God can create rivers in the deserts of our lives, turning our dry and barren places into fertile ground. But the question remains, will we let go of our pain and trust Him to do so? Will we allow God to take the broken pieces of our hearts and fashion them into something beautiful? In The Problem of Pain, C.S. Lewis writes, "We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us, we are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be." This encapsulates the challenge we face when hurt or betrayed. We know God promises to renew and restore, but the path to that renewal is often lined with suffering. However, as Joseph's story shows, if we remain faithful, God will not only restore us but also elevate us, using our pain for a greater purpose. In our moments of suffering, we must ask ourselves, are we willing to trust God with our pain? Can we believe that He is working in our lives right now, even when it seems like nothing is changing? Joseph's story, as interpreted through the lens of C.S. Lewis's wisdom, encourages us to let go of our hurt, to believe in God's immediate and active presence, and to trust that He is already turning our deserts into lush, fertile lands. Joseph's journey from the depths of despair to the heights of power is not merely a tale of personal triumph, but a profound illustration of divine providence at work, echoing the truth that C.S. Lewis so often explored in his writings. In Mere Christianity, Lewis contends that God allows us to experience the low points of life in order to teach us lessons that we could learn in no other way. Joseph's story exemplifies this perfectly. Betrayed by his own flesh and blood, sold into slavery, and then wrongfully imprisoned, Joseph could have easily succumbed to bitterness or despair. But instead, he chose faithfulness, trusting in a higher purpose, even when it was obscured by the dark clouds of suffering. Have you ever wondered, in your own moments of trial, whether there is a purpose behind your pain? Joseph's life prompts us to ask this question, leading us to the possibility that our struggles may be the soil in which God plants the seeds of future blessings. When famine ravaged the land, Joseph's brothers, unaware of his true identity, stood before him in need. It was in this pivotal moment, when revenge would have been justified, that Joseph chose a different path, one of grace and forgiveness. How often do we hold on to grudges, missing the opportunity to be agents of God's mercy? Reflecting on Joseph's response to his brothers, we see a man who recognized that his suffering had been transformed into a means of salvation, not just for himself, but for many. As he declared to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis 50 verse 20. This echoes Lewis's assertion in The Problem of Pain that pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Joseph's life, therefore, is a loud declaration of God's ability to bring beauty out of ashes, to turn the most desolate wilderness into a place of abundance. But beyond the miraculous transformation of Joseph's circumstances, his story challenges us to consider how God might be working in our lives even now, in ways we cannot yet perceive. Are we, like Joseph, willing to trust that God is with us in the prison as much as in the palace? Lewis's writings remind us that hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. Joseph's ascent from slavery to rulership was not just about his personal vindication, it was about the fulfillment of God's larger plan. A plan that required Joseph to endure the refining fire of adversity. So, as we reflect on Joseph's story, let us also reflect on our own lives. What challenges are we facing today that could be preparing us for something greater tomorrow? How might God be using our pain, our disappointments, and even our failures to write a story of redemption? In the end, Joseph's life reminds us that God is always at work, even when His presence is hidden from our view, weaving our hardships into the tapestry of His perfect plan. When life wounds us deeply through betrayal, disappointment, or pain, it's in these moments that surrendering our burdens to God becomes essential. Consider Joseph, a man who faced unimaginable hardships, yet his faith never wavered. He believed that God was weaving something new from his suffering, much like how God transforms deserts into rivers and barren lands into fertile fields. Are we willing to trust that God sees our struggles and is already at work, bringing beauty from our ashes? C.S. Lewis once wrote, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world." Through our trials, God is not absent, rather, He is powerfully present, using our pain as a canvas to create something far greater than we can imagine. But how often do we cling to the past, holding on to the rearview mirror instead of looking ahead? Lewis also pondered, there are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. This speaks to the necessity of shifting our focus from the past to the promises of God that lie ahead. The Israelites experienced this firsthand when God broke their chains of slavery, leading them into a new land flowing with milk and honey. What if, like them, we believe that God is doing a new thing in our lives today, far surpassing any previous victories? Are we ready to step into the abundance He has prepared for us? Or are we shackled by the fear of what lies behind? To those struggling with addictions, financial hardships, or emotional pain, Lewis's words resonate. Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. It's in our darkest moments that God often prepares us for His greatest works. Imagine being freed from every limitation, every curse, every chain that binds you. Isaiah prophesied that the Lord's favor would be upon us, leading us out of captivity and into freedom, prosperity, and joy. Do you believe this for yourself? As you reflect on these questions, join in the prayer chain, lifting your hands and surrendering your name to God, trusting Him to bring the change you've been longing for. Pray Psalm 23, not just for yourself, but for those who desperately need God's intervention. Share this prayer with others, and as Lewis encourages, let your faith be the light that shines in the darkest of times. Claim the promises of God over your life, for this is a new day, and He is indeed doing something new in your life. Amen. Open your heart and pray with me. Psalm 23 offers a message of comfort, protection, and divine provision, perfect to reinforce the idea that God is driving away the forces of darkness and guiding us safely. When we reflect on the profound metaphor of God as our shepherd, we are invited to ponder the depth of His care and guidance in our lives. As C.S. Lewis once observed, relying on God has to begin all over again every day, as if nothing had yet been done. This daily reliance is the essence of faith that trusts in God's provision even when the path ahead seems uncertain. Have you ever found yourself in a moment of doubt, wondering where your next step should lead? The imagery of green pastures and still waters reminds us that God, in His infinite wisdom, knows exactly what we need to restore our weary souls. But what does it mean to truly follow His lead? Lewis spoke of the weight of glory, the idea that every experience, even the valleys of shadow and death, carries a profound significance when we trust in God's purpose. In those darkest moments where fear seems to overshadow hope, we are reminded that we are never alone. Just as the shepherd's rod and staff guide and protect the flock, so too does God's presence bring comfort and courage to our hearts. How often do we forget that even in the presence of our enemies, God is preparing a table for us, a place of peace and provision, even amidst turmoil? The overflowing cup symbolizes not just abundance, but the boundless grace that God pours into our lives. Are we living with an awareness of this grace, or do we sometimes overlook the daily miracles that sustain us? Lewis believed that the Christian life is one of constant growth, of being transformed from one degree of glory to another. This transformation is most evident in how we respond to life's challenges, knowing that God's goodness and mercy are not just fleeting comforts but faithful companions that follow us all our days. As we dwell on the promise of eternal communion with God, let us ask ourselves, do we truly live with the confidence that we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever? This assurance is not merely a future hope but a present reality, one that calls us to walk each day with trust, courage, and gratitude. In every step, whether beside still waters or through shadowed valleys, we are invited to experience the profound truth that God's love is our eternal dwelling place. As we journey through life, we often find ourselves burdened by the weight of past struggles and injustices. The echoes of old pains can sometimes cloud our vision, making it difficult to embrace the fresh grace that lies ahead. In moments like these, we must reflect on the wisdom of C.S. Lewis, who once wrote, "You can make anything by writing." This profound insight reminds us that our lives are like open books, and every day we hold the pen to write a new chapter. Consider how the past might still be shaping your present. Are there unresolved hurts or disappointments that hinder your ability to see the blessings unfolding around you? Reflect on the way these past experiences influence your current outlook. Just as Lewis believed in the transformative power of imagination and storytelling, you too have the capacity to reshape your narrative. casting aside yesterday's shadows to embrace a brighter future.
In the sacred quiet of prayer, let us ask for divine assistance to release the chains of our past. Imagine a future where every new day brings an opportunity to experience God's favor and love in ways you never thought possible. As Lewis suggested in The Problem of Pain, our suffering can be a profound way to connect with God's greater purpose. By surrendering our past to Him, we open ourselves to receive His gifts with renewed faith.
Do you trust that God's plans for you are filled with peace and hope? When you face uncertainty, remember that every trial is a stepping stone towards His promises. The book of Jeremiah assures us of God's plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29 verse 11. Let this promise be a beacon of light as you navigate through life's complexities.
As you wait for the manifestation of God's promises, consider the patience required in this process. It's a spiritual discipline that C.S. Lewis often explored, emphasizing that patience is not passive but a form of active trust in God's timing. Reflect on how waiting and trusting in His plans can lead to a deeper connection with His will.
In gratitude, thank God for His unwavering support and guidance. Like Lewis, who found solace and inspiration in his faith, seek to renew your own sense of purpose daily. Invite His presence into each moment, allowing His goodness and mercy to be a constant companion. As you conclude your prayer, let us recite the Our Father together, a timeless reminder of our dependence on divine provision and guidance. Allow this prayer to be more than a ritual. Let it be a heartfelt request for God's kingdom to manifest in your life, providing daily sustenance, forgiveness, and protection. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. In embracing this prayer, may you find the courage to leave the past behind and step into a future brimming with hope and divine favor. Imagine standing at the crossroads of your life, where the shadows of doubt and the weight of past struggles seem to close in. In such moments, do you not wonder where your strength will come from? C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny." Consider this: God is not merely a distant observer in your life, but an active participant, driving away the darkness that seeks to envelop you. But how do we truly grasp this protection? What if the very pains and injustices you faced are the forge through which your faith is being strengthened, preparing you for the blessings yet unseen? Lewis, in his reflections, often spoke about the armor of faith and the importance of equipping oneself with spiritual resilience. When you declare, "My faith is the shield that protects me," you are echoing a profound truth. Faith, indeed, is the armor that withstands the assaults of fear and despair. Yet, is it not through prayer that this shield is fortified? The power of prayer is not in its ability to change God's will, but in its capacity to align our hearts with His, to prepare us for the battles ahead. As you leave behind the remnants of past hurts, ask yourself, what new favor is God preparing you for? Lewis encouraged believers to look forward with a heart full of hope, not because the future is guaranteed to be easy, but because it is held securely in God's hands. There are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind, Lewis assures us. This hope is not wishful thinking, it is a confident expectation grounded in the character of God. When you set your eyes on the future, infused with hope and confidence, can you not feel the new blessings already beginning to unfold? God, in His infinite wisdom, is guiding your steps, even when the path seems unclear. Trust in His plan, for He knows the way to your victory. The question remains, will you trust Him enough to leave behind what no longer serves you? And as you journey forward, consider this: what if your testimony could be the catalyst for someone else's breakthrough? Lewis believed that sharing our faith is not just an act of obedience, but a vital part of our spiritual growth. By sharing this prayer with others, you are participating in the divine work of spreading hope and encouragement. Do not let your spiritual routine falter. Renew your prayers daily, as C.S. Lewis would advise, for it is through this daily renewal that we keep our hearts aligned with God's will. And as you do, imagine the movement in the spiritual realm, the unseen forces that God is directing for your favor. If you believe, let your voice be heard. Type "I believe," and let your faith be a testimony to others. In the words of Paul Davis, a messenger of God, may you find immense blessings as you walk this path. Remember, God's hand is upon you, guiding, protecting, and leading you to a life of victory and favor. Let this be the anthem of your journey, and may your faith light the way for others who are still finding their path.